So, element 115. That's the one. When I asked, again on Facebook, what is the one thing that convinced people most that Bob was telling the truth? Element 115. And if you are new to our channel, please like, subscribe, hit that little bell notification so it tells you about new episodes coming up. It really does help us out.
Yep.
Now, the debunkers say it's not that big a leap. Element 115, there was a gap in the periodic table. If you were a scientist and you were going to pick, you might just pick it. And then the fact that now it's being discovered, and it is this super heavy element as well, which is some of the scientists have got, if we could actually stabilize this, what do they think it would be like? And some particle physicists are basically saying it would be really dense. And I'm like, and that's exactly what we're talking about. If you want something that's going to create gravity, you need something that's really dense. So it's not just that they've discovered this 115, it's discovered it and it might actually do what he says it does.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also a bit, but you could argue that maybe he just picked a number that wasn't on the periodic table and he's got lucky. But
yeah, but there's other gaps in the I don't know. I think it's unlikely. I think it's unlikely that he'd specify that the fuel source for an anti-gravity propulsion drive was element 115, which we haven't managed to stabilize that in our in the atmosphere on Earth yet.
No.
It doesn't mean that it might not be stable in a different atmosphere around a different planet with might be a bigger mass, different gravity, different. You don't know. They could have more massive elements from their sun, a composition of elements more in the heavier range, which makes element 115 stable within their solar system. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, also you imagine how it would affect technology if this stuff was, if you could dig 115 out of the ground and it did what we think it does. We wouldn't have bothered having an internal combustion engine. We'd have gone straight to anti-grav technology. Like 50 years ago, we'd have been traveling to Mars, and it would have been easy.
I think you need to develop technologically on a reasonable linear path. You can't just jump to extracting element 115 from the ground and having a anti-gravity propulsion drive when you haven't even got jet propulsion or steam engines, or you need some kind of progression.
I'm not sure, mate. I'm not sure. Because, I mean, if you think about Victorian times, if they'd have dug 115 out of the ground and you could just basically stick it to the bottom of a metal cart and the cart floated.
They would have had no idea how to use it, what it was about.
But they'd have learned. My
point is, they would have taken years and years and years to have learned. We'd have still developed all of the other forms of propulsion first.
I'm not so sure. I think you could. I think what I think is the development would go a different way. I don't see why they would bother when they had the possibility. If they had 115 and it didn't need.
It's like the building
massive
of the
refining of things.
Giza Plateau don't really line up because they're supposedly the oldest, yet they're the most technologically superior in terms of the architecture.
The new pyramids got worse and worse.
It's not how evolution works or how the development of a skill works over generations. You have to build on the basic understanding. I just don't think you're going to be able to dig up an element out of the ground and then figure out it's got anti-gravity propulsion properties very quickly.
Maybe. One of the things that I found most interesting as well is that when Bob was talking about 115 to Jeremy Corbell for the film on Netflix, we don't know what Bob said. We know Jeremy Corbell, they went out into the woods basically, and Jeremy asked him about it, and he said they had an agreement basically that it would either be allowed in the video or not, but Bob would decide later. So then you see the bit when he's talking about it and just fast forward it through, but that's not the interesting bit of the video really. The interesting bit is then the next day, the FBI and everybody else drop on Bob and raid him. And he says it's the second or third time he's been raided by the FBI. In the last episode, I asked a question. If Bob is telling the truth, why isn't he dead? These are people that if they want to kill you, they kill you. But maybe it's because he actually has 115. Maybe he has some leverage. And that's why Bob is still alive. And they tore his life to shreds the day after he was talking about sample of 115. Because in the past he has said he has a sample of it. He's got some. he snuck it out, basically. He's even done this cloud chamber test, which Jeremy Corbell keeps showing the video of, but he's only got a snippet of the end because Bob taped over it. He taped over an episode of Golden Girls over it, which is, again, the more you learn about Bob, the more you go, yeah, he'd do that. And this cloud chamber test, he says, was basically an element of 115. It's like, it looks like a hockey puck. It's lead lined to keep it stable, and you put like a vapor across, like like dry ice, and you have a beam of light, and as you distort the 115, you can bend the light because the gravity wave and actually distorts. It's so strong it can actually physically distort the light beam. So that can't be done normally without prisms and things. You can't bend light. Well, we're slowly developing the technology now, actually, where we can, but it doesn't quite work that way.
Light, you can refract light by changing medium. So when it goes from one surface to another medium, it refracts, and the angle of incidence changes. So technically, you're bending light when you change from one medium to another, like at the boundary between air and water.
That's what I mean. That's a refraction. He wasn't refracting it; it was physically bending it. He says we don't see it in the video that we have. We just don't see it. All we see is a bit of light going across and some vapor and stuff, because he says it's the end, it's the cool down period of the experiment. So, but the fact that he discusses it one day and then the next day, the FBI turn up, that's interesting. They're looking for something. They think he's got something.
Yep.
So what do they think he's got? I mean, they said at the time that somebody had bought something dodgy from one of his chemical company, and they wanted the records, and they said, well, you could have phoned me up for them. Why are you raiding me?
Yep.
So
it gives more credence to his story.
Yeah.
Why the interest if he's got nothing or done nothing that would interest the American government? All that does is vindicates his story to me, and just says that he's telling the truth, and the American government's lying, and they're trying to stop him from revealing something.
The American government wouldn't lie. Why would they lie?
No governments lie. History tells you otherwise. But...
Which is why, like, say, the Tic Tac and Gimbal videos still. I mean, I'm sort of taking the piss here, going, there's people in the background going, with like that. Well, I've got the air balloon stuff ready, but it genuinely, lying is their go-to. When we did 9/11, one of the things we talked about was like red flag operations, and it's
false
it's
flag.
a go-to. What did I say?
Red flag.
Did I? Oh, I don't know why I said that. False flag operations. One of the last things, just want to really touch on, because you said a minute ago that like maybe 115 could exist if you had a different sort of star system where it allowed for heavier elements. Bob thinks that Zeta Reticuli is where these aircraft, these vehicles came from, these night-flying saucers. He says that's where they think it came from. That's a binary star system, and it's a binary star system. When I researched it, we look at a lot, and there's lots of satellite time spent on this area, right? Which is maybe strange, maybe isn't. I don't know. It's about 39.3 light years away. But the interesting thing I thought was both of these stars are very similar to the sun. They're about the same size, about the same temperature. Does that mean that because it's similar to our sun, then it's potentially could have planets? I've got a fly flying around with it. It's driving me crazy. It's really big. I keep seeing it in the camera.
Yes. Well, as they've recently found out in the last 20 years, since we identified the first planet around a star, what was it, back in the late 90s?
Yeah.
We're now managed to, all the stars that you observe in the night sky are in the Milky Way galaxy, and they're pretty much in a small particular region of the Milky Way galaxy that are observable from our planet at night. Okay, they now reckon that the Milky Way galaxy has a couple of 100 billion stars, and
like 200 billion, isn't it?
And they reckon from the planets that they found already that they reckon that each star will have about a 20% chance of having an Earth-sized planet in the habitable zone that with liquid water that pools on the surface. So about 1 in every 5 stars you look up at night has a planet,
which could have life on it easily.
Have life on it.
Yeah. And what we know about life on Earth is that if it can exist, it does exist. Even in very harsh environments, if it can, it does. So in that case, what's 1 in 5 of 200 billion? I can't do that math. You're better at math than me.
40 billion.
Christ.
Habitable planets in our
the
galaxy.
Potential of life.
And then there are several hundred billion galaxies, all with several hundred billion of their own stars.
Yeah. And obviously, we don't live in a binary star system.
We well,
we don't currently live in a binary star system. I know this thing is about
85% of the star systems we observe in our universe are binary systems, but we're in that 15%, or have we just not found our binary star companion?
We're looking. Well, I mean, they think there's a very large object just outside the Kuiper belt, don't they? That could be something that they still, but because it's basically died now, it's really hard to see.
Yes.
So, but they keep doing, and there is.
What's more likely? We haven't found it yet, or. We haven't found it yet, and we adhere to the standard 85-15, and we're one of the 85% of the stars that operate as binary star systems, or we're one of the smaller percentages, the 15, and that we definitely know it's not there. I'd say the former is more likely than the latter.
Well, we also know that there is something wrong with Neptune and
something
Uranus
with the outer planet.
Yeah, that there's something quite wrong with their gravity and their orbit, and we've been trying to look for Planet X for years because we know there's something big out there that's messing with their orbits and we can't see it. Some people say that's Nibiru. I would think it's more likely that it was some sort of brown dwarf, something really big that's
How about there's a brown companion star with a planet orbiting around it called Nibiru?
Very possible. Well, one of the things is
that's what the Sumerian texts and the Anunnaki and the fallen angels and the Nephilim from the Old Testament.
Yeah.
That's what all of the old religious texts go into. If you look into depth into most of them, they all link back to that.
And one of the interesting things about that is that we believe it's maybe observable from the southern hemisphere. Zeta Reticuli is only observable from the southern hemisphere, and then we go and build a telescope on the South Pole, well, not on the South Pole, but on Antarctica. On Antarctica, an incredibly difficult and expensive place to build a telescope and maintain a telescope. We can only go in there in the summer months, and then we have to sort of shut it down during the winter months. It's an incredibly difficult place to build a precision engineered telescope, but they did it.
Why? The reason?
Because they're looking for Planet X, or because they really wanted a good look at Zeta Reticuli.
Well,
it's both possibilities. Both possibilities. So, what do you? I think I know the answer to this, but what is your thinking? Would you bet the house on Bob?
Bet the house on Bob, but I'd probably swing it 90-10 in Bob's favour that he's telling the truth.
That's the highest percentage you've come out with. You normally go about 60-70%.
Even
when you believe something, you go 60-70 normally.
I just don't see how it's likely when he keeps getting proven on most of what he said, not change his story, and we know the American government lies and tries to keep secret technology hidden, and he was supposedly working on secret tech. It just all aligns perfectly that it's more likely that the American government's lying than that Bob's lying.
Yeah. The thing for me is as well is Joe Rogan believes him, and so to say about Joe Rogan, he's not stupid, and he has access to lots of people, the things, and the thing I like about Joe is as well that he was really big into UFOs for years, but then he kept talking to people that just talk rubbish, and so he went off it, and he says he was convinced it was all just nonsense because the people he was talking to talk nonsense, and then he came back to Bob, and he started talking this, and then he's like, I'm back into it. I'm passionate about it again. I'm talking to the right people now, that talk sense. But on that Joe Rogan interview that Bob Lazar did, he got that migraine. And the migraine to me was suspicious.
Yeah, it did seem a little suspicious, I must admit.
It seemed very convenient in a way for Bob to sort of go, if a question came up he needed to think about, he went, oh, my head. Give me a sec, I just need to think. And then Jeremy Corbell would jump in and sort of lead him where he needed to go. I did find that a little suspicious.
Yeah, I did as well. There are some suspicious things. Yeah, maybe it's not quite 90. Maybe it's more 80-20 than 90-10. But I
actually go with you. I'm actually
likely.
90-10. I actually genuinely believe Bob, but there is that 10% that I'm just a bit like, I just want to be cautious, because he's either the most amazing whistleblower we've ever had in the alien thing, and we need to be listening to him, or he is almost a psychotic liar, because he actually believes what he's saying. When we're talking about something like this, we don't want to be tricked, do we?
His personality, his intelligence, they don't tend to pander, though, to him.
No.
Lying.
No. And I believe Bob. I believe. And
also the fact that he's got nothing to gain about going back over this story from 30 years ago now. Yeah. When it disrupted his life, he got raided by the FBI again. He was probably well over all of this, didn't want to get involved in it anymore, living his life outside of...
well, he talks about people camping on his lawn, doesn't he? Crazy people camping on his lawn, and he doesn't like it. I actually genuinely believe he could have got a migraine because he was as stressed as he says he was, because he's not sure this was a good idea. Mm-hmm. He wasn't sure going on Joe Rogan was a good idea.
Exactly.
So, maybe we take it for face value and go, yeah, okay, I'd be stressed as hell as well.
Yep.
But I think people go on about a lot about how he looks, though, and I think this is a guy with an ego and with a personality, and he's a fascinating character anyway. I believe him. I'm 90-10, which is the highest for me, and I don't like to be tricked. I need to look at both sides of a story. I never want to be conned. I want to believe him, and that's part of my problem. I want to believe him, so I'm very cautious with the evidence, and I believe him.
Yep.
Thanks very much, mate. We will have a chat next week.
Yeah, please like it. Yeah, well, I was going to say please like and subscribe. I can get it out, so never mind.
Try again. I'll edit it out.
No.
I'll edit the cough out anyway.
You already got a bit you edit in for that anyway, haven't you? Honestly?
No, I don't say it again at the end.
No.
Not normally. Just say that bit at the start.
Most people just do a 5-second stop bit, and they just insert that into the video.
Yeah, I'm not that good at editing.